All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. David Truitt here, slowly becoming the ESSER expert, along with I've got Joanna and Carla. Amanda's in training today. We've got Ms. Crawshaw, our board rep, and you can see got about 17 others in our Zoom today, and I appreciate you guys all being here to learn more about the ESSER process and where we are in anticipation of Wednesday night's board meeting. As always, do the chat feature or jump off your mute button and just, we're informal. Just let us know what your questions or comments or needs are, and we'll do our best to answer them. Wanted to remind you of a couple things. I always want to start with these ESSER Zooms with remembering the big three from way back when we started this process. Remember, the ESSER 1 through 3 monies are all about learning loss and bridging gaps with our students due to COVID-19. So you always have to remember that umbrella over all of our discussions. Remember, we've had a lot of conversations about 2 versus 3, and remember, we are going to take up the option for the 3-year plan, and so we'll hear more about that here in a little bit. And then remember, whatever we discuss has to be tied to our ESF or SQ&A and our data, including the survey data, which I'll go over today as well. The current timeline, our goal is for this Wednesday night to present a plan to the board for approval. In addition to that, we'll go over all of this information in detail, like we've been doing at these different Zooms, and the feedback. And then we have to hold a public hearing, so if anyone's present at the meeting and has questions, we just start doing a Q&A back and forth and answer anything we can. Again, as I shared last time, what the board approves is more of a skeleton outline. Even the grant doesn't do specifics except dollar amounts and the headers. And some of the things we've been presenting over the last couple Zooms has been more detailed than that. So at least we know where we're heading to see if we're meeting the goals of the data and the survey results in the ESF plan. So I'm going to go over all those things again today. I thought about 3 goals for today's as we head into the board meeting. First, I'm going to share any ESSER updates, and there are a couple. Any updates to our plan, and again, there are a couple of those. Answer questions that came up from last time as we go through the different pages. I want to share the survey data, the 3 tables, and then the, excuse me, sorry, allergies, and then the feedback in the comment section. And then there was another question where you could add comments, and I kind of did a little study of how many times things were mentioned and tried to group them into headers, and I'm going to share that out as well. And then finally, any presentation feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys as we go through this, see what things are confusing. Maybe you think something's missing. Maybe you need more information about something. With the timeline of Wednesday night, it's imperative we stay on that. The posted positions to get the new tech going, purchased, ordered, the scheduled trainings and PD. Some of it would be this summer. Going into the August red days, and then even some of the red days during the school years, excuse me, and then ordering any materials. And so it's important we get going on these things. Some districts are a little ahead of us and some are a little behind us. And posting the positions is very important, especially since most districts will have deadlines or dates of the end of June, beginning of July for a person to get out of their contract with wherever they are, depending upon the first day of school date. So if you think about that kind of a timeline, if any district is the last week in June, really we just have, roughly 2 weeks. When I say that, 2 full weeks, maybe 2.5, maybe 3, to find these folks that may be interested in joining our team. And some of them are internal, which has created some other openings and things. And so it's important that we get going on those things. Remember, we can post anything, but we can't hire without it being an approved board position and going through the process. And so posting versus hiring are different things. So we're working on some job descriptions and things since last week's meetings to get all that stuff ready to go. All right, as always, I want to share my screen and show you the ESSER website, so I'm going to go to that. Just as a reminder, I'll go back to our main page. I told you last time about this black box right here that used to say COVID-19 planning. We got our website company to change it to SR3 plan so everybody can see it right on the main page. And if you click there, it goes to our strategic planning websites. And the last one here is the ESSER one, but I've got it directly linked to that bar on the front page. I've added all of our meeting information here to the middle of the page. I've got our online feedback survey to the Survey Monkey right there in the middle of the page. And then all the handouts or links I've been using, or Joanna's been using, or Amanda's been using, or Carla's been using, we've been dumping here. And we easily could have added 30 or 40 more, but these are the main ones, and they're the ones that we think are easiest to follow from TEA, TASB, and TASA. We put those on there as well. Our last video information meeting that's on our YouTube channel is there at the top, and I'll add today's as the next one. You can see I've added 2 new documents for today, June 7th, and those are the ones, if you're following along, I'll put them up on the screen, but if you want to click, I've got updates to the budget plan I'm going to go over, and then the Survey Monkey data as of today. And as we move through this, these dates will change as different versions come out, but I kind of wanted to show our progression of where we started and where we are now, backing up to the middle of May there. And then the documents are listed down here. These are all the West ISD things I've made. All right, and so looking at this, I think the easiest thing to do is jump in with the budget plan and start going through that information, which I know and hope will lead to some questions. Let me make it a little bigger here. First of all, I'll kind of go through each page just to tell you if there's any updates. As a reminder, I laid this out using the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funds and what they're going towards or have gone towards. If you attended the last Zoom, you're aware that our ESSER 1 funding is spent. It was all risk mitigation, COVID-19 planning and supplies. You can see it's 171,000 and some change. And we spent over that throughout the 2021 school year. And so ESSER 1 is spent. Then you go to ESSER 2, just here at this beginning part, you can see that dollar amount has changed since our last meeting. Joanna actually received the exact amount, where in our last presentation, it was an approximation. It was roughly 4,000 more, but we'll take it. We've added that now to the ESSER 3 funding pieces I'll talk about here in a moment. The risk mitigation plan supplies that we went over on the ESSER 1 is listed here at another 190,000 and some change. So if you take the 742 from the 190, you can see right now in ESSER 2 funding, we have 551, 495, 18. And remember, all the ESSERs are about COVID-19, learning loss, being out of school, bridging gaps. And so those same guidelines are for all 3. They all go back to last March when we went home from school due to the COVID planning. And they're all reimbursable for things that we've done in the past year. But Joanna has that under control, as you can see, with the 190 and the 171. So these dollar amounts are things we can begin using in 2022 and then the following 2 school years. So a key purchase with the ESSER 2 funding, we thought we would go ahead and add the technology piece right here up front, because we know these are 2 things that have come up in every facet of our plan. Remember, the Chromebook piece for students is all centered on grade 3 and some additional grades 4 and 5 units. And I still see on my sheet here, it just says grade 5. That's what I was told originally, but I heard last time that it's really grades 4 and 5. So I'll fix that and repost this. I just noticed that. The reason we're going down to grade 3 is all about online STAR testing and making sure that our students have the devices they need as that requirement comes closer and closer to being true for all STAR testing. So we want to get them used to using the Chromebooks and doing their assessments and their interim STAR and all those different things online, their unit assessments and things. And so we've taken it down, whether you know this or not, to grade 4. And so we want to extend it to grade 3. What's different between the elementary and secondary plan is grade 6 through 12. The device is checked out where the student can take it home. At grades 3 through 5, after this purchase, their class sets, and that's why we need the additional 4 and 5, grades 4 and 5 units, is make sure we have 1 per student in each of those classrooms as well. All right, and so that's the student piece. And then, of course, we have Chromebooks and touch screen devices at grades 2 and below. All right, let me stop there because I need some Diet Coke first. Refreshing. Student Chromebooks. Any questions on Chromebooks I can answer? Are there additional student technology pieces you want us to look at? And before I answer that, I saw in the survey piece, one of the highest rated things that made the top 10 per se, lockdown browsers, plagiarism detection software subscription to help combat cheating as we've moved a lot of things online. And I've read so many articles recently about how that's all across the US and as everything's moved to remote and things like Schoology, and as we put devices in their hands. And so I get that's a need. So if someone wanted to bring that up, I do have that down and know that's something we've got to look at for August.
So we're ordering extras for move-in kids, and I know we'll have move-out in, the in and out flow, but just to make sure that when somebody comes in, we have one for them to start with right away.
Yes, actually, we had quite a few extras with the purchase we did last fall, because some of the kids opted out, Ms. Crossaw, because they already had their own device, and we allowed them to continue on with their own laptop. And so we have some that haven't even been unboxed. Yes, ma'am, we're ready to roll.
Fine. Some places that I'm in and out of, they don't have enough to go around, so.
We're okay there, ready to roll. Plus, we had the additional ones we bought for remote instruction through the connectivity grant. And we already had some that we had in place for that as well. So we do have a surplus, and that's why we're not even purchasing all the ones we need at elementary, because we have others. So we're ready to roll. All right, on the staff Chromebooks, 170 units. You can see what that costs. And for the student Chromebooks and the staff Chromebooks, these are exact costs, including the docking system and the Chromecast to replace Apple TV. We have quotes already in the board packet for Wednesday night, ready to roll. With their approval, then we can move forward as soon as Thursday with placing these orders. So these are exact costs. On the staff Chromebook unit, I think you're aware it's the more souped up one that has the flip screen on them. It'll have a docking station, so you'll still have your teacher desk set up with the monitor and the mouse and the keyboard, but then you can pull it when you need to, and whatever you need to do with the classroom to make it mobile. And of course, the big piece is you can take it home with you to work on grades or lessons or whatever you need to use it for, which is something we've been asked about for many years, is to give the teachers that ability to take it to and from school. And so we need 170 units. You heard Mrs. Adams say this is for instructional aides as well. That's why that number is that high. And to beat Ms. Crawshaw to that question, as we need others, we'll order them, because that number could grow as we see if there's someone else that needs a unit. We want to make sure we're providing that for all applicable staff. Questions about the staff Chromebooks? The only question I received last time is the reminder for Kim Woodard and high school folks that are in the labs needing the more souped up laptop for their software running needs because of how heavy some of that software is. So we're aware of that. Any questions about the staff Chromebooks?
Not about the staff ones, but I do know, especially with the freshmen, the charger cords, those were constantly being lost and borrowed between kiddos? Do we have extras of those?
That's a very good question, because I saw all those emails like you guys did of trying to check them all back in, and what was missing abundantly was the cords. So we definitely need to order some more. And Mr. Clander even asked about like in the cafeteria, for example, charging stations and things where if their charge was out, they make these big cabinet units that we could put out that have a locking mechanism on them outside the school day, where the kids could charge at lunchtime and leave their device in what looks like a little locker that slides in. And so we're going to look at those as well. So we talked about some places where those might go. We talked about the library also, but we know there's some things are needed there. We talked about little ones in those breakout spaces between the classrooms that are down the hallway. We were just a little worried about monitoring those. We're at lunch. We have administrators on duty that could even be stationed by and things.
Well, and the tables in those areas do have plugins. So if they have their cord with them, they can plug them in right there. It's not that big a deal in those collaboration
That's
areas.
true. See, this is why we've got to talk and have these meetings. We totally forgot that. It ended up on the list, and you're right. Those do have those plugins on them. See, we make mistakes quite often. No, thank you, Jared, for that reminder, because that was on the list. So you're right, those spaces already have them. But we'll definitely look at more charging cords. You're right. We just need to have a box full. That's going to be something we will repeatedly need.
You've got something in the chat box.
Oh. Ms. Scott asking if we're still going to have the labs, and the answer to that is yes. I think there's 4 labs on the high school side and 1 on the middle school side. Those will still be outfitted with those desktops. Those desktops will not go away. All right, so you can see I added something else to help clarify, because with all this technology comes need for instructional technologists. You know, the role has other duties assigned to Francis and the tech guys, specifically Cody and Joseph. But we know over time that you can't have, 1,000 plus Chromebooks in the district and not have the support there. And so we know we're going to have to move into this over time. I was just reluctant to have instructional technology full-time positions in our ESSER money when there's needs of intervention and things at crisis counseling. And so at some point you just have to make a decision. And so one thing we decided to do was at least put some robust stipends for teacher leaders of $5,000 each for each campus in this role for Tech Tuesdays, on Red PD days, on days where we could get them a sub where they could be available during, conference periods all day long. And so it's kind of a transition of a model we can try. And frankly, if this model is not going to be what we need to do, we've got to look at then in the future about having instructional techs on each campus, an elementary and a middle high, because you have to have that support. You can't have all this tech, and if it's not working, you guys know how that goes, and it leads to great frustration. People don't want to use it. So we've got to make sure that we've got the support we need there. Right now with our staffing plan, we technically have 3 techs in Francis that can assist with this. And so getting in the tools they need and the passwords they need and the training they need, I think you'll all agree that Cody and Joseph have been good additions and helpful. Got to get them more visible and with the ability to really answer every question they get, and not just be guys that replace a battery and a mouse or a keyboard, but being able to help you with some bigger things. And we're ready for that. So you can see the project total for technology is $161,000. So in the SR2 money, that difference is the $424,000 figure you see there in the middle of the screen. And then I want to hover on this three funding amounts because they're different than the last Zoom we had. So now you can see my formula is the 1.666510 figure with the 424 figure. So that's our new total. And so we took that money, which is just a little over 2 million, and we divided it out over the next 3 school years. And you can see it comes in just under, a little under 700,000 a year. So that's our ESSER budget figure, but it's ESSER 2 and 3 combined. And that's why it's a little bit more with the new figure Joanna got, and even when we first started meeting in May. And so that's really good money and really good starting place with a lot of our initiatives. And I love the carryover year plan now, because one of the biggest questions I heard was how will we sustain this past 2023? And so having one more year will help with that. And so having the 3-year budget pieces, I think, is huge for the things that we want to put in place, especially when committing to a staff member to say, you know, about the grant funding and when would their job be up and would we be able to sustain it past 2024? And we have to be able to tell them yes if it proves to be a success in our plan, a need, something we need to continue doing. We have time to figure all that out and assure them that they'll be with us for the long term. So you can see the figures there again, a little under 700,000. Now we get into the allowable uses, and remember our headers. We've got the new staffing requests, which I'll go over, including the ones that we're paying locally, what the ESSER grant calls incentive pay, the professional development and training and instructional materials and resources, and then the extended learning time and summer learning and mental health services and supports. The only header I don't have in our plan is that sanitation and facilities. We're funding that locally. And really, when you talk about facility needs and some of the things that the ESSER grant will pay for, our facilities, of course, at grades 6 through 12 and the things that we have done since the explosion, you know, I think you'll all agree are not things that would probably appear in an ESSER facilities plan. At the elementary, yes. And then we have the challenge of, well, we're in our last year of being at the elementary because we're moving out and we're going to have a party tearing that sucker down. And so really we got to weigh those options when some things came through about air circulation and ventilation, some roof leaks and things that we're just going to have to handle internally and don't want to put in a 3-year grant when we're leaving the elementary after 1 year. And so we're going to continue to look at our summer projects that those things are on and get as much of that done on our own as possible. So that's why you don't see that one on here where some districts would have that header. On the new staffing requests, again, a lot of thought and discussion went into this. And I want to make sure you guys understand, because I don't think this was clear last time. I added this disclaimer here at the top because I know some folks were texting and emailing me about these staff figures saying, whoa, that person makes way more than I do. I want to apply for that. Well, just as a reminder, these are just budget figures. And you can see up here at the top, I added based on 15 years of experience in the role, based on our salary structures in each of these roles. It doesn't mean you would get paid that. It's, you know, it's already in our system at this rate. And I just got to have something for budget purposes. And so that's what these figures mean. Doesn't mean you'd come in at that. You could come in much lower or even higher, depending upon how many years of experience you have. So I just want to make sure you guys knew where these figures came from. And some of these are even budgeted on some new salary pieces we're adding. For example, the counselor piece with some of the House Bill 3's information that we're tweaking, for example. Also instructional aides, we've been looking at their pay. And the House Bill 3 piece. And then of course you can see the stipends I mentioned for instructional tech there. If we start down here though on the next page, wanted to make sure you guys knew that these 4 were always going to be a part of this plan when we looked at our needs assessment and things. Is the second diag that you can see there, the extra help at the elementary, the instructional aid piece. So there's really 2. There's one we're funding locally for LLI, and then there's another one up here because Ms. Casas requested 2. Reading intervention, is another need at West Middle School, High School. And so you can see that we've got that in the plan as well. If you'll notice, 3 of them are repurposed positions within the district, not new staffing requests. And so there are things that we're, other roles that we're looking at doing in a different way, or new or reinvented way, maybe the best way to say it. Something that we felt there was a greater need for as we moved some things around and hadn't hired some things. The diagnostician is truly a new position with some things I didn't fill with Mr. McKeska and Mr. Reniger leaving. So there's a need here. And so we had the staffing positions, and we definitely had a need here to support Brandy and the increase in special ed testing. And I've shared with you guys that we've already hired Ms. Bowles and Sandra, who many of you know, and she'll be a fantastic addition to our team. Many years of experience in multiple districts as a diagnostician. So we're excited about getting her. And she'll be here in July. And then these are the new created in ESSER funding roles. Of course, this counselor role, and I always put a / social worker, just because whatever direction the candidates that apply for this go, we want to be open, because we're talking about the mental health and emotional health piece for our kids here. And so that can look differently with the family component even, and having to work with other outside groups. We talked about some partnerships with some other groups that they'd help coordinate. We've already set up some, not really an interview, but more of an information session with some of them to see what they could do for us. This credit recovery dropout prevention piece. Sorry guys, it really started raining, so I'm starting to get some internet fluttering. So if we shut off, I'll get it back up. This credit recovery piece and dropout prevention role, we had been doing it as other duties as assigned, but we have such a need here, especially because of COVID, with kids with credit holes, credit needs, where they might have 2 or 3 classes in person, but need another 9 credits online to graduate. Maybe they need a semester to put with another semester to come up with a year average. But we've had a number like we've never had before of seniors the last 2 years that need a credit recovery piece in order to stay with their cohort or even graduate in the 5 years, let alone the 4. And so there's a huge need for here, even to track down some of the kids that didn't come back from last May. And so we feel like we've got to have this piece and have someone totally dedicated to this plan. And it's going to be a big piece of this whole ESSER plan. In addition to the reading interventionist that I mentioned down here at the bottom, we have a math one at middle school, high school. I've been asked about these roles at the secondary campus since I got here, when we added them at the elementary, and why we didn't have that continuing on when there's kids in need. And so we've got those in the plan as well. A lot of second block pieces for this role. The old math reading lab to give it a name, but the way we're blocking ELAR in math right now at the different grade levels at middle school, this could be someone that even went in and supported and helped with class size reduction, and maybe the second hour pulled the kids out based on need and intervention level. A lot of great things could happen with this. We right now are blocking ELAR at 6th and 7th grade, math at 6, and now we have a need for some blocking of math at 7th and 8th, and even at 8th grade reading, or English as we call it. I'm not sure if y'all seen all the STAR data, but we did very well. So the first thing I want to say overall, if you think about all of our challenges over the last year, we have much to celebrate that only 4 out of the 22 STAR tested grade level tests decreased from 2019. So we had 18 that went up, and some of them double digits, even some over 20 percentile points, which is just an amazing accomplishment to you, the teachers, and our students and families, and our planning. And so unfortunately, the 4 areas are all at the middle school. And as you guys know, that 71 is teetering, whichever direction, the data will show us we're going there, because we don't get letter grades. So next year we will. So we've got to get going back in the positive direction there. In the 7th grade math, for example, was dropped from an 80 to a 53. And so we know we've got 8th graders that have huge gaps, and where this math interventionist is going to have to be plugged in to give those kids a double block math next year to make sure they're ready, not just for STAR, but to bridge the gaps, the holes, and to make sure they're ready for Algebra 1 as freshmen. And so we have a lot of work to do there with that 7th grade rising to 8th grade class, reading as well and writing as well. And so that's where those 2 positions are going to come in a huge way for the middle school team and kids. Same with the special ed teacher roles that you can see there, making sure that we have in our staffing plan the 2 inclusion at each of the grade levels. And Carla will always say when we have this conversation, our special ed staff always go where the kids are. And so even though it says middle school, there's high school needs as well. So getting more folks working with the kids, going into the classrooms, meeting them where they are with their IEPs, assisting the teachers with things that they need, making sure that we have these supports all the way up through our system, and not just at elementary, but middle, high school as well. Right now I see Rhonda and Cindy running all over, doing a fantastic job with their help with Carol and the aides, and this just giving those ladies in those departments and the past guys some additional support. Dyslexia specialist, we know we need an additional half-time at the elementary based on group size and numbers there. And then I mentioned these LLI focus groups for instructional aides that will go through the training, and that there's a need there as well. So that's the staffing requests. Any questions on any of that, or something that you wish was in there that may be missing? Excuse me. Anything else on staffing? We're on the right track. Yay! On incentive pay, this was a late addition, and not because we didn't want to do it for you. It's when we had these 4 bullet points here above with this projected total of 352 with the 352, it wasn't possible. So by moving these to our local funds that Joanna's working on and the repurpose piece, we were able to provide an incentive pay, or what ESSER calls retention stipend. The reason they go stipends, if you think about it, if we build it into our pay scales, at the end of 3 years, what happens? You just get cut pay. So by doing it as a stipend, it still counts in your overall salary per year, and we can ensure it's budgeted for all 3 years. And then if it's something we want to continue doing after the 23-24 school year, we do build it into the pay scales. I got asked a good question after the last one, and last Zoom, and I'll make sure I say this again. For our teacher pay scales, of course, you'll still get your steps in addition to this. And then everyone else, because administrators and things aren't those kind of pay scale pieces, it's the 1,000 on top of what they make, and anything else we add to it based on our budget practices over the next 3 years. So just a reminder that we're talking about 2 different things: teacher steps, and then the non-certified and administrator type salaries. And then I was asked about how we're going to pull out bus driver and part-time. So I added these 2 bullet points, that for the bus drivers, the best way to do it is raise the $35 per route to $40, because some only do 1 route or 2, some only fill in. So this is a way to ensure all bus drivers get a retention piece as well. And extra $5 a route is a big increase for them. If you think about all the school year and how many routes they run, that's the best way to go about that piece. And so I worked on that with Mr. Mailer. We'll be one of the highest paying bus driver, well, I said that incorrectly. We'll be one of the we'll have the highest bus driver pay, one of the highest in Region 12, which was our goal for recruiting and retaining our bus drivers. So 40 is a high rate, which is really good news. And then for our part-time employees that are 0.5 or below, we do the 500. And so 1,000 a year for a total of 3,000 over the life of the grant is the way to do the incentive pay. And I know incentive pay is a weird way to say it, but really it's a retention stipend. And I know we had some discussion at our last meeting about when you would get it. out over each check or at Christmas time or before the summer. You know, there's many different ways we can do it. And so, of course, we'll get your feedback on that. I believe if we send out a survey, you'd want it broken down over all of your checks, but we'll definitely check on that and make sure before I just assume something that's not what you want to do. Of course, this figure is with benefits, so it's not going to be $936. It's truly $1,000 because we're budgeting over that piece, so you'll get the true $1,000. All right, any questions on the incentive pay bullet? All right, on the professional development training, these will go a little faster. You can see we had a lot added after our last Zoom. We had some TCA conference requests, CAST, the reading academies, and not the one you're doing through the state. It's just a generic name now for workshops and reading pieces. And I made a whole long list because I got all of these requests. Of course, we'll look at STEM, math, writing, coaching, fine arts, CATE, special education, ESL, GT, FFA. Of course, with COVID opening things back up, I'm sure all these conferences will come back online, and we need to see which ones you're talking about and figure out dates and registration and all that as well. And of course, the Region 12 and state conferences was on there for last time. This one potentially is one where I'll have to add more money. If we go back up to the staffing request, after we know an actual salary amount for these positions, the excess money from this piece of the grant will come down and we'll add it to the professional development and training. Because over 3 years, this is 150,000, but it could easily be closer to 200,000 just based on those budget allotments. In the instructional materials and resources, I know this one doesn't look long, but Mrs. Adams took the list from the campuses and already started looking at it and purchasing with some title funding we still had for instructional materials and resources. And so a lot of the stuff is already in the works to be purchased. These were some that we had to pull out, the iReady teacher toolkit that you guys have asked for, and then the STAR test maker for test questions for a new bank as well. And then a big one is this writing program, but we've got to decide which one we're adopting. And I probably had a dozen different ones thrown my way in emails and surveys based on things you've used in previous districts if you're new to our district and things maybe you've read about. So we're going to have to decide on one through a process like we would do any adoption, like we just did with the foundations for the elementary for the phonics piece. So there'll be a committee and a process for that to figure out which one, and maybe it's a different one through the system. That's what we've got to find out. I keep being asked about one that says maybe Jared, what was it called? There was one.
Are you talking about the Am I Right?
Yes, I can remember
That one?
I was looking for the survey data. That one's come up several times from the secondary folks. I just don't know what it looks like at the elementary. So we got to do some studying on this.
Okay. And I have a contact for that if you need the name of
Wonderful.
somebody.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so there's that. I added tutoring back. And of course, this is in addition to the title piece. It's just additional funding because a lot of good feedback came on ways we could do this, including a really intriguing peer tutoring plan using the fishbowl at the middle high school, which I'm intrigued by, including the PALS piece at the elementary and utilizing some different pieces. So that's a new addition. And then at the bottom, just making sure, what I struggle with on this mental health services and supports is that looks like such a small amount until you go up to the staffing piece and realize all these interventionists and the crisis counselor / social worker. I mean, a lot of this, I think we could tie into the feedback we're receiving for that one about having folks to check on kids and meet them where they are and ensure we're plugging them into resources and help and counseling services and even outside West ISD things. And so having someone assisting with all that is going to be huge. And so really a lot of this could be down there as well. I didn't want to shortchange this one, just say, oh, we're only spending $10,000 on mental health when this one's coming up as a huge one in our data. All right, I thought I'd share also let me go back to our website here and the SurveyMonkey data. Let me enlarge this. You can see on our SurveyMonkey data that the biggest is academic so far. We're right at 92 responses. The parents now have the survey as well. I've noticed a number of them have already responded since I put this presentation together. Right now it's about half and half staff and students actually. We've got about 41 staff members that have done it, and so I'll keep sending it out to see if we can get that number up. But the academic piece is coming in number one. You can see there, followed by the mental health, social, emotional. You know, for me, the mental health and social emotional really go together. It's interesting that the state had pulled those out for the grant. But if you think about the social emotional piece and what that means for our kids, you know, we start talking about how they manage their emotions as part of the definition, along with developing meaningful relationships, self-confidence. It mentioned empathy. It mentioned their self-worth and value. I think you'll all agree that those things go hand in hand with the mental health piece. So really that's an altogether one for me in how we address it. The second question about the traditional school day, the tutoring piece is coming in overwhelming. And we've learned here in West that trying to put it within the school day or within our, especially that 7:15 time frame before the start of school is a must for us. Even providing times before and after school, even with transportation, hasn't traditionally been a way to get our kids to these things. And so that didn't surprise me that it came back that way, especially with summer programs, with how challenging it's been over the years to get the kids to come to those, even if we show up at their door. We're very much a school district, and I'm not saying we're going to give up on those other things, but that has to be August to May within our school day times, before and after within a reasonable amount of time to make sure that they're getting what they need. And so that data doesn't surprise me. On data 5 or question 5, when you had to rank the different topics, you can see that the staffing came back number 1, mental health was number 2, and then the technology was 3. And I think you'll all agree that our plan's nailing our top 3. On the facilities, I think what got a lot of people clicking on that one is this idea of specialized instructional spaces with struggling learners and learning loss, you know, how we use our space. But more importantly, I think a lot of people viewed that as who and where and how. And so I believe that's why that one got a lot of looks too. Obviously in the new elementary, little better opportunities there than how we're packed in at the current elementary. But I think we're just touching the surface of the middle school, high school, and some of those areas with the available space and functions we have there. So I wanted to mention that our data is coming in right in line with our plan on this one as well. On questions 2 and 6, where feedback could be shared, I tried to tally the best I could by trying to decipher. I think you guys saw my email about how sometimes the danger of anonymous surveys is I'm not sure what someone's asking and I have no way to follow up with whoever typed it. And so I did my best, used my gift of discernment to try to figure this out. And so I kind of grouped the top ones there about struggling learners, return from remote instruction learners, SPED learner support was mentioned 17 times. The writing program came back next at 13 times, and it was worded differently about frameworks and trainings and adoptions. And so I tried to group that together there. The final mass decision came up, and I think that was heavy with the kids about get these masks away from us. And of course, we'll work through that. And you guys are aware of where Governor Abbott is at this point after June 4th on that one, that it's optional for students and staff. And we'll get more guidance on that. Morath just published 3 bullet points last Thursday that I'll share with the board Wednesday night that highlight what we do if we get a positive case again moving forward. Way less stringent than anything we had to do last year though. On the mental health support and additional counselors was mentioned times. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thought someone might have feedback. Sorry. I get excited when people talk because I'm doing all the talking, which was not the goal. Lunch times were mentioned 9 times, mostly by the kids, especially that 1 o'clock lunch hour. We're going back to the 3 lunches. And so the 1 o'clock one goes away. Social events were mentioned a lot by the kids about give us our pep rallies in particular back and our club time and let us have some fun is the way a lot of it was mentioned. Totally agree. Let's get this rolling. Water fountains were mentioned a lot. So with strength and conditioning camp this morning, we needed to turn them back on in that part of the building. And so we'll work through that as well. And then this cheating lockdown browser thing I mentioned came up 5 times, the turnitin.com type website. And I know Eduphoria has a lockdown browser to it if you create the assessment in it. And I don't know if that's the answer since we already own that or if we're talking about something else. So we're going to form I know you always laugh at this, we're going to form a committee, yay, and look at some possible lockdown browser and ways to combat online cheating and plagiarism detection. Heavy in of course, the ELAR department there to see what we can do to have it ready for August.
Mr. Tritt, I know at the middle school and high school, we've adopted HMH, and there's a plagiarism detection piece through their writing component that we already own there. I don't know if elementary has HMH as well, but that might be something we add.
That sounds good. I'm not sure, Carrie, is that a yes or no? There's a lot I know, I don't know.
We use FNP, Fountas and Pinnell.
Oh, I knew that answer. Yeah, I totally knew that one. I didn't know exactly what you were asking. I could have answered that one. In the chats, we got a question for the elementary about continuing with character strong. So this must be the character trait stuff. What is the answer on that elementary? Oh, Christy Bryan answered it in the next question. It says, yes, we are. Yay. And then there's a concern about cheating and edgenuity. Sharon, I think the best way to combat that is back to this person that will be coordinating that and being over that and monitoring that. And so again, I think there's a huge need there for that. That's just someone's full-time job. And I could be wrong and missing the boat on that, but we need to talk more about that, especially since that is a big high school thing. Mentioned 3 times or less. These are in no particular order. Strengthening our gifted and talented program. Science lab equipment came up. Science lab time and requirements as far as how much time our science teachers are spending on lab. I know some of that was COVID related, but we need to get back to what that percent is on the school calendar and how we can support that. Class size reduction. I wasn't sure where we were going with that. Obviously, we put some numbers in place in the master schedule that we can put again in Skyward to cap it. I know Ms. Cosda's doing the best she can down there, and she'll keep the 5 teachers at grade 3. And because there's a need there with the numbers at that level. We halted transfers at pre-K to keep those numbers down. So there's some things we're doing. Some places we know are hot spots. But I also believe this extra intervention pieces of the 4 new roles and the additional things at the elementary will help with that as well by going in and working in small group and stations and really breaking down that piece if all that's working in the way it's in my head. So I think that will help as well. It's more bodies and hands and minds and intervention assistance. So I think that's a big piece of that. Middle school ag came up at grade 8 in our rotation, and that's in that Kate wheel. Culinary came up again with what Ms. Glockner's doing with the fabulous club there and kids interested in that. And we had already committed to still being a club next year and giving her additional funds, a budget, and looking at the kitchen pieces, the equipment pieces, and we'll see where it goes from there. Service hours came up, but I really think maybe they were asking about PALs and how we can strengthen that. And I'm even thinking this position on, wrong page, that position when I talked about the credit recovery piece, maybe that's a person that can coordinate PALs even. Peer tutoring came up a lot. A reading challenge to get kids to read and check out books came up. And then air ventilation came up, and I'm not sure what that one was. And I'm assuming it's elementary. So maybe we have something there, but they didn't give me specifics, but I did add it since it was mentioned.
David, I would bet that service hours is tied to being able to say I volunteered X amount for credit as a high school student and that kind of stuff. But anyway.
It was definitely mentioned in the framework of like an honor society kid needing hours, and now that COVID's passed, we need to bring that back and they need to get their hours. That's how it was worded, that if a club had hours, maybe we got to get that going again. And here were some ideas like the peer tutoring and things that they mentioned, maybe that they could earn them in. So I agree with you. I think it was kind of all that. But that's what we've heard so far. And as more people fill out the survey, I'll add that. I feel fairly confident we're on the right track. And I hope you guys agree, or maybe you're going to say, Truett, you're way off track. You've been drinking too much Diet Coke. And this is not in line with what we're seeing in the data and the survey piece and the tenets of ESSER. But I'm feeling pretty good. But now's the time where I need you guys to tell me if I'm way off base and off my rocker, and Joanna and Carla and Amanda and I will hit the drawing table again, and we can do one more Zoom to tell you what we've worked on. So love to hear your feedback and questions and new ideas if you've got any. Bueller. Oh, got a chat from, is that Claudia? I'd like to have continuity. Yeah, we can figure that out. And that's probably something, Claudia, we can do with our local funds, because we have things for that. And I know Miss O'Brien just sent me a link at the end of the school year about the character program. Did she get with you by chance? I just didn't want to discount what she sent me. I'll send it to you. But I definitely want that continuity so the kids get the same verbiage and language and lesson piece, and it grows, and it's stuff we can reference throughout our school system. Love that. I think middle school.
When we talk about intervention at the middle high, does that also include credit recovery type things? Because I know like in Kim's class, she has some classes where she's teaching at the same time that they're trying to recover credits for other classes and that kind of thing. So I didn't know if that was a separate, if that was part of that intervention piece that we were talking about or not.
It is. They would literally set up in a lab all day and have, instead of, like you said, where we're double blocking or stacking, I think would be the word that Sharon would use, in other people's rooms, they would have 7 periods of credit recovery. So for the high school people online today, I think you'll agree that's a huge need. And having someone that's all they do is help kids and track them, back to what Sharon was saying, even about the cheating accountability piece, the integrity or fidelity, to give it a word, of the program.
And when you're saying 7 periods a day, your expectation is not for them to be there 7 periods a day, but to help them meet their goal of graduation, because some kids need to be working to support families, need to be working for, and that's the model that I've seen in other places that I really would support is, 7 hours a day on a computer, one, is not good for multiple reasons, but some kids can do it. Some kids need to work. Some, we've got all sorts of reasons people drop out, and we need to kind of look at that on an individual need to help support them with their goal.
Yeah, and
100%
Lee,
agree.
I could probably answer some of that. So like, for our master schedule to work, sometimes students just need a period of it, and then they're face-to-face the rest of the day. But for the master schedule to work, we would want a teacher available for 7 periods.
Yeah.
And our most at-risk kiddos that you're speaking of, we generally would do like they would still be a full-time student, but more like 4 to 5 periods more than likely, unless they choose to stay longer.
Okay, I get the teacher. I'm thinking more of the kids that are like, you know, I've only got 4 hours a day. I can't be in school all day. I've got to go out and work. And so we work with them to come in and work, you know, X to X or X to X to really get that goal. If our ultimate goal is to really get them graduated, not to meet our numbers goal or whatever that may be.
Right, yeah. And so a lot of them prefer, at one point we were doing like a morning session and an afternoon session, but most of our kiddos end up working in the afternoon. They prefer the morning. But yeah, I mean, it would meet that goal as well.
Yes, I was strictly talking about the teacher schedule, but yes, y'all nailed the student side of it. I just meant having one person dedicated to 7 periods, like Sharon was saying, would be a huge blessing. But I love what both of you said about the student side of it. Awesome. What else? Good dialogue. Anybody else have questions or things you'd like to see us consider? Okay, as always, you can email me, call me, come by and see me, talk to your principals, call Carla, call Amanda, call Joanna, whatever we can do to help. Hearing none, we're going to move forward then to Wednesday night with similar presentations and specifics for the board. And we'll seek their approval for the outline of the plan. We'll hold the public hearing if anybody wants to come. We're back in person, by the way, not Zooming for this month. So we'll be on the second floor here at 6:30 Wednesday night. And I'll send out an email Thursday morning about where we are in the process and if everything was approved. And then the postings and the technology purchases and the scheduling of the conferences and the purchasing of the resources can all begin. Boom. All right. Let me know if you've got anything else, and I'll just keep gathering survey data and see if anything changes. And if we get something way out of left field in our survey data, I'll let you know if we need to have another Zoom before Wednesday night, okay? Appreciate y'all giving up your morning right in an hour. We rule. Have a great lunch and a great day, great week. Go Trojans.